Well, hello everyone and welcome to my March book roundup. I'm going to share with you short reviews and ratings for the 7 books that I read this month. If you do like what you see here, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe and hit the little bell icon. I do 3 videos a month, including these monthly book roundups. So my rating system is simple. 5 stars means I love the book, 1 star means I hated the book, and I do use 0.5s and everything in between. So that'll give you a little bit of an idea of what I think about each of these books. I have 7 books here, and I'm going to start with the 2 books that I read on my Kindle. The first book that I read on my Kindle this month was Full Moon by Jim Butcher. And it is the 2nd book in a book series called The Dresden Files, which is a modern fantasy series that follows Harry Dresden, who is a wizard in modern-day Chicago. Modern fantasy fans rave about this book series, and I think it's up to like 15 or 17 books or something like that. But I'll be honest, 2 books in, I'm not feeling it. In the first book, we were introduced to Harry Dresden, who's kind of a misogynist, and he's was in the middle of probably the most predictable mystery I've read in years. But it had some really interesting world building, so it brought me back. So I read this 2nd book, was really excited to start the 2nd book. Butcher dialed down the misogyny, which was great. The story was not as predictable, but it just really wasn't that good. And unfortunately, the world building elements, which I thought were the most interesting part of book 1, were kind of non-existent in book 2. So I was a bit disappointed in this one. I'll probably give the Dresden Files one more chance just because they are very short reads, but so far I'm really not feeling it with this series. I gave Full Moon by Jim Butcher 2 out of 5 stars. All right, my 2nd book that I read on my Kindle this month was actually another book 2 in a book series, and it was Die Trying by Lee Child, which is the 2nd of the Jack Reacher books. Overall, I liked it. The things I liked most, Jack Reacher's a very just a cool hero to follow, and this one was non-stop action from the first chapter all the way to the last page. Some of the things I didn't like, Reacher's kind of a Mary Sue. You know, even when he gets into trouble, you know that he's going to be the smartest guy in the room and he's going to get out of it. So there's kind of zero stakes in these first 2 books so far. And I feel that the secondary characters were just so bland. I mean, you could have called most of them like FBI guy number 1, FBI guy number 2, and it wouldn't really have changed the story a whole lot. More like than dislike, and I'll probably pick up more of these Reacher books in the future because they're, quick thrillers, quick, easy reads, and a good change of pace for some of the larger volumes that I tend to pick up. So, Die Trying by Lee Child, I gave 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, my next book is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Now, this was a reread from about 10 years ago, and I loved it then, and I love it today. This is one of the finest books that I've ever read. It did make honorable mention of my favorite books, and I think that's perfect place for it. It's the story of a man and a boy, and that's the only names that McCarthy gives you for these characters, just trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic world. It's bleak, but it really speaks to the spirit of survival and perseverance that the man and the boy just keep moving forward. Again, it's a very bleak tale, but it's so well told. I don't always love McCarthy's prose, especially in some of his other works, but in this work, it's masterful. The Road is one of the finest books you'll probably ever read. 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, up next we have Human Croquet by Kate Atkinson. If you saw my favorite authors and where you can start video, Atkinson was in my top 4 and an author that I love and wanted to read more. So with that preface, I'll say that this is a rare miss from her. Most of the time, Atkinson's books, she takes all these different elements and then at the very end she just wraps it up real neat with a bow, and you're amazed at the end. She didn't do that in this book. I felt that the setup was pretty strong and a lot of the execution was very strong, but when it got to the end, just the parts didn't mix together very well. Again, I still adore this author, but this just wasn't one of her works that speak to me. So Human Croquet, I gave 2.5 out of 5. All right, on to some Brandon Sanderson, who kind of dominated this month. The first one I'm going to talk about is Arcanum Unbounded by Sanderson. So Arcanum Unbounded is a collection of 3 novellas, 5 short stories, and 1 excerpt from a graphic novel. And it's all takes place in different worlds within his Cosmere. That's what Brandon Sanderson calls basically his shared universe of where he tells all his fantasy tales. This was a very strong collection, in particular the 3 novellas from the worlds of Mistborn and the Stormlight Archive and Elantris were very, very strong. The crown jewel for me was The Emperor's Soul, which takes place in Elantris and is frankly one of the best novellas I've ever read. I gave Arcanum Unbounded 4 out of 5 stars. All right, next up, I've been making my way through the Stormlight Archive, which is Sanderson's magnum opus, or planned magnum opus. Words of Radiance is the second in this series, and it's a planned 10-book series of which Sanderson has finished the first 4 books so far. I love the characters in this series. It's one of the greatest things about it. I thought the first book in the series, The Way of Kings, was possibly the best first book of any book series I've ever read. So the bar was kind of high, but this really delivered. Maybe not as good as The Way of Kings, but I do feel that the plot moved quite a bit forward. We still had great character development, and probably my only fault is that he's really taking his time in the world building, and I felt in this one that I just wanted more. But overall, just a fantastic book, and I gave Words of Radiance 4.5 out of 5. All right, and the last book here is book 3 of the Stormlight Archive, and that is Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. This is, I think it's the 3rd largest book I've ever read. It's about 1,250 pages, but it did not disappoint. It took one of my favorite characters so far from the series, Dalinar, and it did his backstory, and it was as tragic and heroic and amazing as I thought it could be. And the end of this, the last 200 pages of this book were downright incredible. I will say that this is the first time in the series, though, partway through the book, I did feel that it got a little bit monotonous at times. And I just wanted more world, more character, more plot moving forward a little faster. But overall, this was still just another fantastic installment in the series by Brandon Sanderson. I gave Oathbringer 4.5 out of 5. So that was my March, the 7 books that I read this month. Book of the month, I would say, is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Little sneak preview to next month. I'll be reading some more of my favorite authors. I have some Bernard Cornwell planned. I have some more Kate Atkinson planned. And I have one by Michael Connelly on the shelf that I'm hoping to get to. Oh, and I just got one in the mail today, Stephen King. So you probably 4 of my top 10 authors are going to be represented next month. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. You can also follow me on Twitter and Goodreads. I'll put that information down here as well. I'd love to interact with you on those platforms. But once again, thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.